I'm Gary Anthony Ramsey with your Hour News Now Rewind. Stories making headlines for the week ending April 30th, 2011. Our top stories include: the White House releases Barack Obama's complete birth certificate. Will it finally quiet the birther chatter? An Oklahoma legislator says blacks don't work as hard as whites. A homeless woman is arrested for stealing education by registering her son in the wrong public school. Niger pleads for aid as tens of thousands of Libyans spill across the border running from war. Police in Florida continue to investigate the stabbing of Miami Dolphin Brandon Marshall, allegedly at the hands of his own wife. And a songstress whose voice thrilled but whose ethnicity confounded passes away. Our top story: the White House releases Barack Obama's complete birth certificate. But then the president criticizes the mainstream media for giving the controversy more play than other important issues. The document shows the president's date of birth, August 4th, 1961, the medical center in Hawaii, the Kapiolani Maternity and Gynecological Hospital, and the attending physician's signature, Dr. David Sinclair. The release comes after years of endless skepticism about Obama's citizenship, criticism that has become more pronounced in recent weeks.
We're not going to be able to solve our problems if we get distracted by sideshows and carnival barkers. We live in a serious time right now, and we have the potential to deal with the issues that we confront in a way that will make our kids and our grandkids and our great-grandkids proud.
But now some doubters are saying that the document itself might in fact be a fake, so it seems the controversy will continue. After a scare last week that forced the First Lady's plane to abort a landing, the FAA shakes up management at the radar station that handled the flight. Managers were replaced at the facility that allowed the plane carrying Michelle Obama and Dr. Jill Biden as close as 3 miles to a military cargo jet. The accepted range is 5 miles. The C-17 in front of the First Lady's plane could not get off the runway of the Andrews Air Base in time, and the First Lady's plane was forced to go around and land on a second try. From now on, supervisors will handle all presidential flights. And Oklahoma lawmakers let some controversial words fly on the floor of the Oklahoma State Legislature. She says blacks and Latinos earn less money than whites because minorities are not willing to work as hard. Oklahoma City Representative Sally Kern said, quote, "Is this just because they are black that they are in prison, or could it be because they didn't want to work hard in school?" She also took a swipe at women, saying, quote, "Women tend to think more about their family, have more leisure time." After a blitz of criticism, the Republican released an apology statement saying, in part, "I want to humbly apologize for my statements about African Americans and women. I believe that our government should not provide preference based on race or gender. I misspoke while trying to convey this point during debate." In Florida, a homeless man is arrested for trying to rape and rob a radio disc jockey while she was live on the air. 30-year-old Donald Destin pleaded not guilty to charges related to the incident, which happened at a Pine Hills Haitian radio station. Police say Destin walked through an unlocked door into the studio and then took his clothes off, demanding sex and money. The victim could be heard by listeners pleading for Destin to leave. They called 911.
I have the microphone on, and then she said, "Hey, don't kill me. Let me give you money. Let me give you money. Don't kill me. Don't make sex with me," like this.
I didn't want to rape her, but I was attracted to her.
Police say the victim talked Destin out of the radio station and into the parking lot. Once there, she ran to her car and locked the door. Destin was picked up 2 blocks from the scene. In Norwalk, Connecticut, a homeless woman pleads not guilty to larceny and conspiracy charges after she's arrested for allegedly stealing education by registering her son in the wrong public school. 33-year-old Tanya McDowell is accused of stealing more than $15,000 in services, according to investigators. McDowell's attorney says she was homeless and her son should have been allowed to stay in Brookside Elementary School.
The Connecticut NAACP, the National NAACP, we're all fighting vigorously to get equitable education for all people, for the rich and the poor. And this is a situation where the poor has been treated in an unfair situation.
McDowell faces 20 years in prison if convicted. Her lawyers are seeking to have the trial moved out of Norwalk. In New Jersey, a mother sues an anti-abortion group for using her daughter's picture in a controversial ad campaign. Patricia Frazier says the group Life Always did not have permission to use the picture of her daughter Anissa, who appears in the ad that says the most dangerous place for African Americans is in the womb. The signs have appeared in New York, Florida, and St. Louis. The suit claims unspecified damages for using the picture of her daughter that was supposed to only be used for illustrative purposes and not for commercial use. Ms. Frazier also says that her daughter, who is a child model, has lost work since the ad campaign started last month. In Philadelphia, a new sentencing hearing for a man who's been on death row for 28 years. What will it mean for Mumia Abu Jamal? For a second time, the court found that instructions given to jurors were misleading. Now prosecutors are instructed to set a date for a new hearing within 6 months or agree to a life sentence. Jamal was convicted in 1982 for killing a cop the year before. He's always maintained his innocence, saying that he was framed because he was a journalist who was critical of the Philadelphia PD. No date has been set for the new hearing. In New York, police have admitted to giving hip-hop star Sean P. Diddy Combs an escort that helped the entertainer get to a $75,000 gig. Diddy was supposed to helicopter from Manhattan after leaving the Hammerstein Ballroom to get to a nightclub in New Jersey, but the FAA grounded his chopper. Reports say that police cars escorted the entertainer to the mouth of the Holland Tunnel as the streets of New York City were jammed. An embarrassed mayor and police commissioner have said that they can't escort you, then no one should get special treatment. In your Our News Now World Wrap, one of the poorest countries in Africa says it desperately needs help to deal with more than 100,000 refugees who have fled from the fighting in Libya. Niger has taken its case to the United Nations. Officials are now considering how much money and supplies will be needed to deal with the growing humanitarian crisis. The fighting in Libya remains intense as rebel and government forces continue to battle to what could be considered a stalemate. British, French, and Italian military advisors are on the ground in Libya, but President Obama has pledged that no U.S. boots will be on the ground to defeat Muammar Gaddafi. U.S. armed drones are being used by NATO to shoot at pro-Gaddafi forces. In Nigeria, fighting continues in the north as supporters of the loser of last week's election continue to express their unhappiness with the results. President Goodluck Jonathan, a Christian, was declared the winner over Muhammadu Buhari, a Muslim. Buhari says the election was rigged, but observers say the results are valid.
Those who rigged the election have been responsible for the spontaneous reaction by the people in some parts of the country.
Thousands of people have been killed in the violence. Tens of thousands have fled their homes. In the Ivory Coast, as fighting there begins to die down, the relative calm reveals more death and destruction than previously perceived. Alassane Ouattara says that he's starting an investigation into what could be as many as 5,000 civilian deaths. Ouattara took official control of the government after his rival Laurent Gbagbo was captured last week after months of fighting. Ouattara was declared the winner of an election back in November, but Gbagbo, who was the incumbent, refused to step down from the presidency. Mr. Ouattara has ordered all troops back to their barracks in an attempt to get the country back to normal. More than 120 Gbagbo officials have been arrested, along with the now jailed former president. That's your World Wrap. In health news, a new study says that when it comes to beating cancer, blacks are more willing than whites to put all of their chips on the table to survive. The study by Harvard University found that about 80% of black surveys said they were willing to use up all their money to extend their lives when faced with cancer, compared with 72% of Asians, 69% of Hispanics, and 54% of whites. Researchers think it may reflect differences in beliefs about miracles, distrust of doctors among minorities, and a misunderstanding of just how ugly and painful end-of-life care can be. In sports news, police continue to investigate the stabbing of Miami Dolphins wide receiver Brandon Marshall, allegedly at the hands of his own wife. Mishi Nagami Marshall remains free on $7,500 bail. Broward County Sheriff's deputies say that she told them she did it in self-defense. They released a 911 call from his house which made no mention of a stabbing.
911, what's your emergency?
Please come, it's an emergency.
Somewhere. Hello?
Please come, it's an emergency.
Come to where?
The two-time Pro Bowler was released from intensive care after stomach surgery. He's expected to make a full recovery. Marshall does have a history of domestic violence in his past. Well, this week, a judge ordered an injunction against the NFL and its owners, essentially lifting the lockout. NFL proceeded with its draft this week, controversial Auburn University quarterback Cam Newton went number 1. One of the first African-American stars in the NFL passed away this week after years of battling dementia. Joe the Jet Perry died at his home in Tempe, Arizona. He was called the Jet because of his explosive speed and power. He was the first player in the NFL to run for 1,000 yards 2 years in a row while playing for the San Francisco 49ers. Joe Perry was 84. And finally, a sultry songstress whose voice mystified while her ethnicity remained a mystery has passed away. Phoebe Snow was born Phoebe Ann Laub in New York. She broke into the charts with her hit Poetry Man in 1975.
Bashful boy, you're hiding something sweet. Please give it to me, yeah. And to
Her features had many believing she was African American. When asked about it, she and her manager never directly answered the question. So many blacks claimed her as one of their own. No matter what her race, her voice was loved by millions. She left music, though, to take care of her mentally ill daughter. But she still sang on occasion, singing once for President Bill Clinton, and she was the voice of the theme from A Different World. Phoebe Snow was 58. For a complete check of any of the stories you've seen on The Rewind, remember, as always, go to the bottom of the webpage, find the link of the story you'd like to see, and click your way through. That's your Our News Now Rewind for this week. I'm Gary Anthony Ramsey.
talk to me some more. You don't have to go, boy. You're the poetry man. You make things